A billionaire fakes a life-changing paralysis to test his fiancée's love, only to uncover betrayal, danger, and the one woman who truly sees him. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady sound of machines. Soft light from the window fell across the white walls, making everything look colder than it really was. The billionaire sat upright on the edge of the bed, trying to understand the words that had just changed his life. The doctor spoke gently, but the meaning was heavy. The damage to your spine is severe. It is possible you may never walk again. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The room felt smaller. The air felt harder to breathe. He looked down at his legs, as if they belonged to someone else. His hands remained still in his lap, controlled, calm on the outside, but inside his thoughts were racing. This is the moment they will see who I truly am. Beside him stood his fiancée. Her makeup was perfect. Her dress was elegant. She looked beautiful, composed, almost like she was preparing for a photograph rather than facing a tragedy. When the doctor finished speaking, she gasped loudly, but something about it felt rehearsed, not real. "What do you mean he may never walk again?" she asked, her voice rising. "What about the wedding? What about our plans?" The words sounded urgent, but her eyes were not filled with tears. They were moving quickly, scanning the room, the monitors, the doctor's expression, calculating, measuring. Was she worried about him, or about the future she thought she was losing? She stepped closer to the bed, but she did not hold his hand. She did not sit down. She did not lean in with comfort. Instead, she asked softly, "And financially, everything is still stable, right?" The question hung in the air. The doctor confirmed that his condition would not affect his company's current assets. Only then did her shoulders relax slightly. Relief flashed across her face, brief but noticeable. "I'm so glad the important things are safe," she said. He watched her carefully, his heart sinking. Not once did she say, "I'm here." Not once did she whisper, "We will face this together." Her concern seemed tied to numbers, not love. If this is what love looks like, then something is deeply wrong. A nurse adjusted the blanket over his legs. The fiancée checked her phone for a second, then returned to the conversation as if nothing had happened. The doctor explained recovery options, therapy, and long-term care. She nodded politely, but her attention drifted again. At that moment, the billionaire realized something painful. The people around him were reacting to the idea of his weakness, not to him as a person. The silence in the room became louder than the machines. As the fiancée stepped toward the door to make calls, she paused only to say, "We'll discuss plans later." There was no warmth in her voice. No reassurance, just urgency. He remained still, staring at the closed door after she left. For the outside world, this was a tragedy. For him, it was the beginning of a truth he could no longer ignore. And sometimes the most painful diagnosis is not about the body, but about the heart. Before the accident, his life looked like a dream built in reality. The camera would often capture him at the top of the world, standing confidently in front of glass office windows, the city skyline behind him. He was known as a visionary, a self-made billionaire who turned a small idea into a global company. His name was spoken in boardrooms, on news channels, and at business conferences across the country. Success followed him everywhere. But his journey did not begin with luxury. He was once a young man with limited resources, arriving in America with nothing but ambition. No family wealth, no connections, just determination. He worked long nights, studied during the day, and sacrificed comfort for education. While others rested, he was building. While others doubted, he was creating. Slowly, his ideas grew into products. His products became solutions. His solutions became a company. And that company became an empire. His technology changed lives. Investors trusted him. Employees admired him. His brand became powerful. Awards lined his shelves. Magazine covers featured his face with titles like "The Future of Innovation" and "America's Youngest Tech Leader." He owned a grand mansion filled with marble floors and modern art. His garage held luxury cars he rarely drove. He traveled in private jets, attended charity galas, and donated to causes that mattered to him. People saw confidence, intelligence, and control. But behind the success was a man who worked tirelessly, who believed in discipline and vision. He valued loyalty deeply. He trusted the people close to him. And perhaps that was his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. In quiet moments, after long days of meetings, he would stand alone in his home and look at everything he had built. I started with $200 and a dream, he would sometimes think. How far can ambition take a person? He believed that success could solve most problems. He believed that love would naturally follow stability. He believed that when he finally chose to share his life, it would be with someone who understood the journey. Yet in all his achievements, there was one thing money could never guarantee: genuine connection. Was he truly successful if his heart felt empty? From the outside, his life seemed complete. But perfection can sometimes hide loneliness. Power can sometimes hide vulnerability. And when everything looks flawless, it is easy to miss the small cracks forming beneath the surface. He had built an empire with strength and focus. Now, in the quiet of his past, we see the man before the fall, confident, admired, and unaware that the greatest test of his life was about to begin. Because true success is not measured by wealth, but by the character revealed when everything changes. At a high-profile charity gala in the heart of the city, the room was filled with music, laughter, and flashing cameras. Crystal chandeliers reflected light across elegant gowns and tailored suits. Influential guests moved through the hall, speaking about business, art, and future projects. It was the kind of evening where powerful people gathered, and impressions mattered more than ever. He was standing near the bar, calmly observing the room, when she entered. She did not simply walk in. She appeared like a spotlight had found her. Confident, beautiful, graceful. Heads turned naturally in her direction. She wore a stunning dress that matched her smile, and she carried herself with ease, as if she belonged in every room she entered. When their eyes met, something shifted. She approached him with a soft smile and introduced herself. Her voice was warm, her words polished. She knew his name already, of course. Everyone did. But she spoke to him as if he were more than headlines and business reports. "You must be the famous one," she said gently. "I've heard so much about you." He smiled, slightly surprised by her confidence. Most people were nervous around him, but she seemed comfortable, curious, and charming. They spoke for minutes that felt shorter than they were. She asked about his journey, his vision, his ambitions. She laughed at his quiet humor. The conversation flowed naturally, like two people who had known each other longer than a single evening. Maybe this is what connection feels like, he thought. Was this the beginning of something real? Over the following weeks, they saw each other frequently. Dinners turned into long conversations. Conversations turned into daily calls. She attended his events, introduced him proudly to her friends, and posted pictures of them together. The relationship moved quickly, but it felt exciting, passionate, and certain. Within months, they were inseparable. She moved into his mansion. She spoke about their future openly. Wedding plans, guest lists, venues, and celebrations. She had vision, confidence, and strong opinions. He admired that at first felt like partnership. But small details began to appear. She sometimes asked questions about finances in subtle ways. She paid attention to his assets, his company decisions, and long-term plans. She was interested in security, stability, and legal arrangements. He told himself it was maturity. After all, they were building a life together. Still, there were moments, brief pauses in her expressions, when something felt slightly calculated. A glance at his watch. A careful comment about protection of wealth. A reminder about the future. He chose not to focus on them, because love, when it arrives suddenly and beautifully, can feel overwhelming. It can convince even the strongest minds that everything is perfect. And in the glow of admiration and attraction, he believed he had finally found someone who understood both his success and his soul. Yet sometimes, love that moves too fast deserves a closer look, because real connection grows with time, honesty, and trust point one evening, the mansion felt unusually quiet. The staff had finished their duties, and soft lights illuminated the long hallway. He had returned home earlier than expected, hoping to surprise her with dinner and a peaceful night together. As he walked toward the bedroom, he heard voices from the balcony. Her voice. She was speaking on the phone, laughing lightly at first. He stopped near the partially open door, not intending to listen, but something in her tone held him still. "It's almost perfect," she said. "Just a few more months." There was a pause. Then she continued, her voice lower, more serious. "You know how much he's worth, right? Once we're married, everything changes. I won't have to worry anymore." The laughter returned, but it sounded different now, colder, sharper. "I'm not here for romance. This is a smart move. Stability, security, that's what matters." His heart began to beat faster. He stood frozen in the hallway, hidden by the shadows. "Please, let me be wrong," he thought. She continued speaking, unaware that he was listening. "Of course I'll do what's necessary after the wedding. Once I'm legally protected, everything will belong to me too. People think it's about love, but it's really about strategy." The words settled heavily in his chest. Every memory replayed in his mind. Their first meeting, her compliments, her excitement about wedding plans. He began to see them differently. Was any of it real? Her tone shifted again as she spoke to the person on the phone. "He trusts me completely. That's the advantage. Men like him think they're in control. They never see it coming." Silence followed. Then she laughed softly. "I'm doing this for the future I deserve. Love is not the priority." The phone call ended. He quietly stepped back, careful not to make a sound. His mind felt calm on the outside, but inside, something powerful was breaking apart. The woman he had planned to marry was not speaking about partnership. She was speaking about possession. So this is what I meant to her, he thought. The realization did not bring immediate anger. It brought clarity. Deep, steady clarity. He understood now that the relationship was not built on shared dreams, but on calculation. And if she believed she was in control, then she would never expect him to question anything. In that silent hallway, a decision began to form. Not out of revenge, not out of pride, but out of truth. Because when trust is broken, silence can become the strongest strategy. And sometimes the only way to discover someone's real intentions is to let them believe they have already won. And that night marked the moment everything changed. That night, after hearing the truth, he did not sleep. The mansion felt different, quieter, heavier, as if the walls themselves understood that something important had shifted inside him. By morning, his decision was clear. He reached out to the one person he trusted completely, his closest friend since childhood. A man who knew his story, his struggles, and his values. They met privately, away from cameras and staff, in a quiet office space downtown. When he explained what he had overheard, his friend listened carefully without interrupting. There was no judgment in his eyes, only concern. "So you want to test her?" his friend asked softly. "Yes," he replied. "I need to know who she really is before I make the biggest decision of my life. If I am wrong, I will apologize. But if I am right, I must protect myself." The plan began to form slowly and carefully. It had to look real. It had to be believable. Every detail needed precision. His friend helped coordinate with trusted medical professionals who understood the seriousness of the situation. Reports would show spinal damage. Hospital records would reflect emergency treatment. A controlled environment would allow privacy and safety. Nothing would be left to chance. The accident would appear authentic. A staged car crash designed to explain the injury. Emergency services would respond as normal. News coverage would confirm the story. Stock reactions, public statements, and hospital updates would create the illusion. Inside the hospital, however, everything would be under controlled supervision. Only his closest friend would know the full truth. "Are you sure about this?" his friend asked. He paused. Was there another way to discover the truth without risking everything? But deep down, he knew the answer. "Yes," he said calmly. "This is the only way." The plan included strict instructions. He would appear weak, dependent, and uncertain. He would observe carefully how she behaved, whether she showed genuine care or strategic concern. The goal was not revenge. The goal was clarity. He understood the risks. Public sympathy could shift. Business reputation could fluctuate. But he was prepared, because truth was worth more than comfort. As the details were finalized, a strange sense of peace settled over him. For the first time since the phone call, he felt in control, not of people but of his own understanding. He was no longer reacting emotionally. He was thinking strategically. The plan was ready. Soon, the world would believe he had lost the ability to walk. And in that silence, the real test would begin, revealing not only who loved him, but who valued him for the right reasons. Because sometimes, the only way to uncover the truth is to step into the shadow and watch who stays. When he returned home in the wheelchair, the mansion felt different. The marble floors still shined. The chandeliers still sparkled. The luxury remained unchanged. But now the house felt quiet in a new way. Not peaceful, but empty. Most of the staff moved around carefully, speaking in low voices. Some looked at him with pity. Others avoided eye contact completely. He could feel the difference in the air. And then he noticed her. She entered the room softly, not rushing, not staring. She approached with respectful steps and gentle eyes. She did not treat him like a tragedy. She did not treat him like a burden. She simply knelt down to his level so he would not have to look up at her. "Good evening, sir," she said warmly. "I prepared the guest room on the ground floor, so you will not need to worry about stairs." Her voice was calm and sincere. "I also made some food," she continued. "It is a simple recipe from my mother. It helps with strength." There was no exaggeration in her tone, no attempt to impress, only care. He watched her carefully. Why did her kindness feel so different from everyone else's reaction? She adjusted the pillow behind his back without being asked. She made sure his wheelchair was positioned comfortably. She asked if the lighting was too bright. Every movement was thoughtful and quiet. This is what real attention looks like, he thought. Later that evening, she returned with a small tray of tea. She had noticed he had not eaten much. "I thought you might need something warm," she said gently. "Sometimes the body feels tired, but warmth can help the heart feel steady." Her words were simple, but they carried depth. She did not ask about his company. She did not ask about his money. She did not ask about his future plans. She asked only about his comfort. Days passed, and her behavior remained consistent. Each morning, she arrived early with fresh meals. She prepared nutritious food and explained that it would help his strength. She brought books from the library, placing them near him in case he wanted to read. When he needed assistance, she helped without making him feel helpless. One afternoon, when a glass slipped from his hand and shattered, she immediately came to his side. Instead of complaining, she checked his hands carefully. "Are you hurt, sir?" she asked with concern. "Let me see." Her eyes were focused on his well-being, not the mess on the floor. In contrast, he remembered how others reacted, focused on convenience, schedules, and appearances. The difference was undeniable. She treated him like a person, not a situation. And in that quiet mansion, surrounded by wealth that suddenly felt meaningless, he began to realize something powerful. Sometimes the greatest wealth is not found in money or status, but in the heart of someone who chooses kindness without expecting anything in return. The wedding preparations were moving quickly now. Invitations were printed. The venue was confirmed. The guest list included powerful names from business, politics, and media. Everything appeared perfect on the surface: elegant flowers, expensive arrangements, and careful planning. But behind the scenes, he was watching closely. Using the information he had gathered, he activated a secure recording system within the house. A system installed for safety and protection years ago. Captured conversations in emergencies. Now it became the quiet witness to the truth. One evening, he sat alone in his wheelchair in the living room while she entered with a glass of wine. She looked relaxed, confident, and focused. They began discussing wedding details. At first, the conversation seemed normal. Seating arrangements, music choices, timelines. But soon, her tone changed. "We need to move the wedding sooner," she said thoughtfully. "The sooner everything is official, the better." He remained calm, observing. She continued, speaking more carefully now. "Once we are married, the legal structure changes. That gives protection, secures everything." Her words were subtle but meaningful. Then she lowered her voice. "It would be better if his condition never improves. If things remain as they are, the inheritance situation becomes clearer." His heart remained steady on the outside, but inside, clarity was forming. Was this still about love, or had it become something far more dangerous? He did not interrupt. Instead, he asked gentle questions, allowing her to speak freely. The recording device captured every word. Later that night, he reviewed the audio privately with his trusted friend. The conversations were undeniable. There were references to financial control, legal timing, and strategic advantage. The intention was clear: secure the marriage quickly and maintain power over assets. Even worse, there were subtle suggestions about preventing any changes in his health that could alter legal outcomes. The atmosphere shifted completely. This was no longer only about heartbreak. It was about protection. "Now I understand the full picture," he thought quietly. The stakes had risen dramatically. If he had not overheard earlier, and if he had not created the plan, he could have been vulnerable. The recordings confirmed what he suspected. Her focus was not partnership. It was control. He saved the files securely. Copies were stored in multiple locations. Everything was documented carefully. The wedding date was approaching fast. Guests were preparing. Media attention was growing. She believed she was close to achieving her goal. But now he had evidence. He was no longer acting out of emotion. He was acting with precision. The truth was ready for the right moment. Because sometimes, protecting yourself is not about revenge. It is about ensuring that deception does not win. The wedding day arrived with breathtaking elegance. The ballroom was filled with light, music, and over 400 guests dressed in their finest attire. Crystal decorations sparkled under the chandeliers. Cameras flashed. Conversations buzzed with excitement. It looked like the celebration of the year. She stood at the altar in a stunning gown, smiling confidently. To everyone watching, she appeared victorious, marrying one of the wealthiest men in the city. Her posture was perfect. Her expression was calm. She believed the future was finally secured. At the back of the room, the doors opened. All eyes turned. He entered in a wheelchair, dressed in a tailored suit. The room fell quiet in respectful sympathy. Whispered voices spread through the crowd. Some guests looked emotional. Others looked curious. She leaned slightly forward, preparing to begin the ceremony. But he raised his hand. The music stopped. He looked out across the ballroom at family, friends, business leaders, and media representatives. "I would like to say something before we continue," he said clearly. His voice was steady, strong, not fragile. A small ripple moved through the audience. He began calmly. 3 months ago, I overheard conversations that changed everything. I learned that the person I intended to marry did not love me. Gasps filled the room. He continued, describing the phone call he had secretly heard. He explained how he had decided to test the truth. He admitted that the accident and paralysis were part of a carefully planned strategy to observe her behavior. The guests listened in shock. This is the moment, he thought. He signaled gently to his assistant. From the speakers, the recorded conversations began to play. Her voice filled the ballroom, clear, undeniable. Words about securing assets, about legal timing, about ensuring financial protection, about making strategic decisions after marriage. The room grew silent. Faces changed from confusion to disbelief. Murmurs turned into shock. She looked around frantically as the recordings continued. Then he placed his hands on the arms of the wheelchair. Slowly, deliberately, he stood up. The movement was smooth, controlled, strong. A collective gasp echoed across the hall. "He can walk!" someone shouted. He stood tall in front of everyone, No weakness, no assistance. The truth was now visible. She stepped backward, her expression collapsing. The confidence disappeared. Security personnel approached quietly as instructed. There was no argument. No dramatic scene needed. She was escorted out of the ballroom while guests watched in stunned silence. The wedding was officially over. He looked at the crowd, then spoke one final time. Love should never be built on deception. Trust must be proven through actions, not promises. The room remained still, because in that moment, everyone understood that truth had entered the room, and lies had no place to stand. And sometimes, when integrity rises, deception falls without a fight. After the wedding chaos settled, the ballroom slowly emptied. Guests left in whispers, still processing what they had witnessed. The headlines would soon spread, but in that quiet moment, the noise had faded. What remained was truth. He stood alone near the center of the room, no longer in a wheelchair, no longer pretending. The weight of the past months lifted, but his heart felt heavier in a different way. He had exposed deception. He had protected himself. Yet victory did not feel complete. Across the room she stood quietly, not in the spotlight, not demanding attention, simply waiting, respectful and still. She had witnessed everything without judgment. She had known about the plan, yet she had never tried to control the outcome. She had supported him when he needed help. She had believed in kindness long before truth was revealed. He walked toward her slowly. For a moment, he stopped in front of her. The contrast between their worlds felt smaller now. No cameras. No crowd. Just two people standing face to face. I owe you an apology, he said gently. I involved you in something complicated. She lowered her eyes slightly, then replied softly. You did not owe me anything, sir. I was simply here to help. Her humility was steady. Her voice carried no expectation. He looked at her carefully. In a world where many had focused on his wealth, she had focused on his well-being. In a mansion filled with luxury, she had brought warmth. In moments of fear, she had shown comfort. Why did the simplest kindness feel more powerful than grand gestures? This is what I have been searching for, he thought quietly. But he did not rush anything. I want you to know, he said, that I value your honesty and your character. You saw me when I was pretending. You treated me the same regardless. She nodded. I did not see a billionaire, she replied. I saw a man who needed care. There was no dramatic confession. No sudden proposal. Only mutual respect. In the days that followed, he chose to rebuild his life carefully. He reduced the noise around him. He focused on authenticity. He spent time understanding who he was beyond success and headlines. Their connection grew naturally, through conversations, shared values, and genuine understanding. He admired her strength and compassion. She respected his honesty and willingness to change. Love did not arrive as fireworks this time. It arrived as trust, and trust grew quietly. He supported her education goals. She continued her work with dedication. Their relationship was built not on wealth or appearances, but on shared principles and emotional safety. For the first time in a long time, he felt seen as a person, not as a brand, not as a fortune. And in choosing someone who valued character over money, he finally discovered that real partnership begins with respect, patience, and truth.